Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. What was the dumbest thing you ever saw someone do with a corporate credit card? Buy approximately $65 of gas 4 times in 1 hour. He only had one company car but 3 personal cars at home. After an audit, he had been getting away with it for over a year. During my years as a military recruiter, we had XR cards that we used on federal vehicles to pay for gas and emergency repairs. One of our new recruiters got the bright idea to use the card to fill his personal vehicle. Since he was smarter than the average bear, he didn't want to have multiple fill-ups. So, he filled his government car, left the pump on, and had his wife pull up to the same pump to continue filling. We had to save and provide receipts for each transaction. Yeah. So Sergeant Genius was busted when he turned in receipts showing fill-ups of around 40 gallons each time for a car that had an 18-gallon tank. I was new to a particular unit and was asked to assist with the inventory of the supply room and weapons cages. The supply SGT had popped hot for cocaine, and as they were doing the necessary investigations and audits, they found that she had bought a base boat for her husband and new breasts for herself, all charged to her impact card. There was a M9 pistol missing as well. It turned up the day after the inventory in an amnesty box. As I recall, she was sentenced to 5 years at Leavenworth. Had a friend who managed to spend $20K on her corporate card over the course of about a year and a half. Apparently she felt like she wasn't being compensated or treated well at her job, even though she actually was, and would go out and buy things on the card. Dinner, gas, books, makeup, clothes, etc. After the fact she told me that, in the beginning, she'd been careful to buy things only at places she knew her boss and his partner, the only 2 other people who had cards on the account, would shop. Then she tossed all reason aside and would basically hijack the credit card bill every month and cut it up and reprint it without her purchases on there, like her boss or his accountant would never notice the discrepancy in dollar amounts. One day her boss called her into his office and she thought she was going to get a raise. Nope. Credit card statements all over the place. The ultimatum was, pay the money back within the week or be charged. She had to beg a relative for the money. The dumbest part was, even after all of that, she still didn't think she was the bad person in the situation. We stopped being friends shortly after that. This is how fraud works. Rationalization. Opportunity. Financial pressure. Start small and clever until confidence builds and they think they're invincible. It turns into a particular brand of stupid at some point and they get caught. It's fascinating, really. Fraud was my favorite class in grad school. Did check washing for a class presentation. Surprising how easy it is with the right tools. But I digress. A woman who used to work in our accounting department did that. Started writing checks to herself. And since she was in charge, no one else noticed. Finally, the other woman in accounting who sat right next to her started to notice something was fishy and they watched the thief for almost a year, gathering evidence. I think she had stolen something like $51,000 by the time she was caught. A co-worker was dating someone that also worked for our company. He used his company card to buy an addition to the girl's friend's house. Something like a $20K addition. The accountants caught it and started digging around to figure out why we had bought so much wood, drywall, and other building materials. Finally, someone got the idea to start driving around and looking at the employees' homes and found the huge addition on the girlfriend's home. They were both fired for theft. The best part is that it wasn't even her house. It was a rental. Once she lost her job, she couldn't afford the rent anymore and got evicted. I'm sure the landlord was laughing his ass off at the whole thing. Got a nice free addition. Who the shit adds to a rental? The same person who spends $20K from a corporate cards thinking there wouldn't be consequences. I was bartending one night. It was a Thursday, so karaoke was going on. Guy walked in a business suit, walked up to the bar and said, "As long as I'm here, everything is on this card." I said, "Sure enough, what would you like to drink?" He said, "When I say everything, I mean every drink. Shot. And food for every person." He stayed until close and tallied up a huge tab. Tipped 50%. Come to find out he had been let go, but the company forgot to take his credit card. I don't know whatever happened legally, but I made close to 1k in tips that night. Reminds me of the time my mom went to buy a new car. The employee that sat her down to work with her in terms of deals gave her a crazy good price, so she immediately took the offer. Turns out, and I apologize for my lack of memory, he was either quitting or let go that day. So he didn't care about making the dealership any money. The dealership, obviously not happy of the situation, still honored the price her quoted my mom. Have to admit though, she's been a loyal customer to them ever since. That's a tough situation for a dealership and a good indicator of whether they're worried about today's dollar or tomorrow's. You can tell a lot about how a business operates based on how they handle situations like this. Back when I was in high school, I took a cooking class. This is in a small town where the grocery store is only a stone's throw away from the high school, and cooking students are often sent to the store to pick up ingredients. When a student would do this, they would get a little card which they used to pay, and they would have sign a little form at the till. Source. Did this several times, so this one day the teacher asked this kid to go to the store to get oats. He comes back with a bag completely full. When he's asked how much he spent on said oats, he responds about $200, as if that was a completely normal amount of money to spend on oats. I wish I was kidding. For some reason, the fact that this is oats and not anything else just makes it so much funnier. I can't even imagine lifting $200 worth of oats. Or that a store would carry that many oats. Pine nuts, on the other hand, would probably be pretty easy to carry. There was an AskReddit for what did someone do to get fired on the first day. Dude went out on the corporate card and bought like 6 suits on his corporate card on his lunch break. Who gets a corporate card on day 1? Crazy. Lots of people, I'd imagine. My friends who travel a lot all get corp cards at orientation. So before their first day. I worked at a strip club back in the 90s, and a customer ran up a $3,500 tab on his corporate Amex and left without closing it out. A few days later we got a visit from the police as he reported the card stolen. Thing is, he was a regular and we had plenty of video footage of him getting lap dances while wearing his corporate issued polo shirt. He not only got fired but was charged with filing a false police report, which led to his wife divorcing him for being such a stripper loving idiot. Corporate issued polo shirt. No. Even if you weren't using the company card, that's still a dumb idea. I bought a Best Buy employee polo at a thrift store a couple years ago. I'm going to start wearing it to strip clubs. Guy bought a diamond ring for his wife. When it was brought up to him, he said he was going to pay it off, except he never mentioned it to anyone until he was caught. Instead of firing him, they took it out of his next 6 or more paychecks. Nice interest-free loan for him. I used to audit corporate card purchases for a Fortune 50 company. I caught a guy trying to buy a $30 K boat from Bass Pro and a $15 K walk-in humidor. When I worked an audit, we did the same thing at the request of a key, probably coming from the board. Turns out our CISO was charging over $30 K a month on her card by breaking pretty much every corporate expense policy there was. All flights were first class. Hired personal drivers everywhere she went instead of taking a taxi. $200 plus dinners at high-end restaurants almost every night. Suites at the nicest hotels resorts in the area. $300 plus spa visits at any hotel that had one. etc. etc. She was promptly asked to step down. Also had a senior manager who knew he was getting fired go out and buy all of his employees everything he could that would just barely be within policy, so the company would have trouble coming after him for the money. New laptops. Additional monitors. Company cell phones. Briefcase bags. And approved any and all training they wanted to take, even if it required unnecessary travel. Think he racked up almost $40 K in his last week with the company. The senior manager who bought his employees equipment. That's ducking awesome. Way to leave in good standings with your reports. We had a co-worker. May he rest in peace. He spent 13,000 euros in the strip club with the company card. He would have spent more if the bank hadn't blocked the card. Rest in peace because the company had him killed? He committed suicide the next day. Think it was a big duck you at the company. I once ran an audit for a company who, through my audit, found out that an employee was using her manager's credit card to foot her personal purchases. Stuff on the receipt includes massive orders for protein bars, endless entries to PayPal, and even tickets for 2 to an NFL game. Thousands of dollars. Apparently no regret was shown as she was getting canned. So stupid. How did you know it wasn't the manager? Frame the employee to take the fall, but I'm guessing the PayPal was in the employee's name. I don't know that this is dumb since it was legit, but it's still shocking to me. I was at a conference with the big partners from my firm and got invited out to dinner with them and a prospective client. There were about 8 of us in total at a nice steakhouse. I'm a wine fan, and they had a nice list. Partner indicated that my counterpart with client also liked wine and that we should order a few bottles. Partners and CEO were drinking scotch. When we got the tab, it was $17,000. I was of course the only one surprised by this. It was worth it too since we probably billed the client that within the first week. But damn. A co-worker and I took a bunch of clients to dinner one year. Like 25 of us. Clients started drinking Irish car bombs, which turned out to be crazy expensive. Dinner was something like $700. Bar bill was around $4,000. We hadn't been given an upper limit for the trip, so we didn't get in too much trouble, but we were told we would definitely not do that again. Guy I know took his family on a ski trip to Aspen. Every year. For 8 years. Where do I get a job where I can buy my family expensive holidays for almost a decade without anyone noticing? No shit. My company is pretty lax with their corp card policies. My partner bought his kid a dirt bike for Christmas. And a new washer/dryer. Anytime we have meetings out of state, the bar tabs are usually around 10k. But as soon as they find out you're ducking around with it, you're canned. Rumor is that they attempt to collect as well. No clue how true that is though. A few years back it came to light that my mother, the head accountant at a mid-sized company, had been using company cards and creative accounting for nearly a decade to the tune of at least $100k. They stopped investigating when they hit that number because it was enough to pass the threshold for the maximum felony penalty, 25 years. We became aware of her crimes when she went missing and ended up attempting suicide the night before her arraignment. Her suicide attempt was unsuccessful, but she finally went through with it a little more than a year later on the night before she was set to begin serving her sentence. The whole thing has upended my life. Edit. Clarified that prosecutors stopped at $100k because that was the threshold for maximum sentencing, not the threshold to be charged with a felony. My grandmother embezzled nearly $250,000 from the company she worked for, and then successfully shot herself in the head on the day they found out. I'm starting to be shocked by the number of people who are killing themselves when caught doing white collar crimes. Had an employee buy a used car with it. Had an employee pay a court ordered penalty with it. Had an employee draw down cash to buy drugs with it. Alcohol. Prostitutes. 20 years in people management. I've seen it all. Interested in how you found out they had bought drugs with the cash? Did they just confess? Hello, yes, I am on the drugs. The first day on the job, a Starbucks employee charged my corporate Amex card $4,500 for a latte instead of $4.50. See? Starbucks is always overpriced. What do I get if I PM my large tits to you? Guy was overseas on a business trip in Eastern Europe and in an establishment he shouldn't have been in. Decided to buy a round of drinks figuring no one would know from the name of the place what it was. Unfortunately later he was enjoying the pleasures of a lady that worked in the establishment. And having run out of cash, forgotten he had used his work card to buy the drinks when agreeing to specific services being offered by the employee. And was then surprised to be questioned by the FD a month later on why a restaurant he had bought drinks in was also charging him a €50 supplement for anal. Ananas. It should read ananas. The French for pineapple. Very expensive. Pineapple in Eastern Europe. That's either expensive pineapple or cheap anal. Worked at a retail company that gave all of its store managers corporate cards. The cards had higher limits on them, so the store managers could use that instead of maintaining petty cash on hand or having to use personal cards while traveling for training. While visiting one of the stores, I asked where their Keurig machine was. I wanted a coffee and the closest Starbucks was a few blocks away. I had seen the manager submit her expense report with a purchase for a Keurig machine, K-cups, a small bathroom fixture and a few other things. The assistant manager says we don't have a Keurig machine. After looking into it further, turns out the manager had been using the card to buy several personal items over the last few years. He ended up repaying a little over $20K in purchases. When working away, while not officially authorized, but never queried, it was generally accepted the manager there would take the workers out for a couple of drinks at the end of whatever we were doing. Not a full piss up, but a round or two at the nearest bar to where we were staying. Manager had been out most of the day with another boss drinking when we finished work late in the afternoon. We went to the bar to have a few beers and something to eat at the hotel we were staying at. It's okay, I'll get this one. About 5 rounds later we were all like, are you sure this is fine? Yara shifts okay I'm a decent drink here, but even I was rat-assed at the end of the night. Wake up around 10 am and go down for food. Apparently the majority of the booze drank that night went on the card. We officially didn't get in trouble. It only takes one night to duck up an arrangement that's been in place for years. I know. Right. At my work we used to have an arrangement where every Friday the entire dev team would go out during lunchtime and have a beer or two. Management were aware of this, but as long as we got our work done on time they didn't give a shit. But then one Thursday, one of the lead devs had a few more drinks than usual at lunchtime and went into a meeting that afternoon reeking of booze. After that, our Friday lunch privileges got revoked. Not quite a corporate credit card, but in the same vein. Many years ago, when I was in college, our student government had a retreat near the start of the year. The college agreed to reimburse for food, so they submitted their receipts, including their liquor store receipt. Not only will the college not pay for alcohol, drinking was forbidden at school-sponsored events. Apparently this fact was made abundantly clear to the student government. The entire government had to resign and new elections were held. I work for a state college. They scrutinize everything you buy because the money is coming from the state and thus the taxpayers, and we must be held accountable for everything we buy. They want a list of all the people who was at your retreat. No alcohol at all. Ever. I couldn't even buy non-book items off Amazon. Very strict rules with the government. I suspect private colleges might be different though. Dude tried to pass off a $350 spa package as a gift for a client. Problem is we have no clients based near us, the closest being some 2,000 miles away. Not me personally, but my roommate went to a networking thing out of state paid for by the company. All the salesmen have corporate cards for taking out clients and such. The second night there they all head to the strip club. One of the new guys charged about $500 on his card at the club. He reported it stolen after the trip, and as far as I've heard nothing came of it. You can play this card once. Maybe. The balls. I know. I couldn't believe it when he told me he just reported it stolen. It's somewhere between really brave and very stupid. I guess at that point he had nothing to lose. My boss wasted $127 on iTunes to download some music. This doesn't make any sense on his part. If you're immoral enough to use company funds for personal expenses, why not just pirate the music and avoid possible consequences at your job? If he's the type of person to spend $127 on iTunes using company money, I doubt he's smart enough to understand how to torrent music. Guy lived across the country and commuted at the beginning and end of every week. For the first few months, any of his flight or lodging expenses could be covered by the company, per his contract. After that time expired, he was expected to have either moved here permanently, or start covering his own transportation and hotels if he chose to keep commuting every week. He simply never stopped charging his company card for it. He tried to get clever with it too, would route his flights through other cities and pretend he was conducting business there. So they were technically supposed to be covered by the company. and would lose hotel receipts thinking it would be impossible to prove that the hotels he was staying in were local to us. After nearly a year of catching these things and having to make him write the company a personal check every month, they finally fired him. I just wonder why this guy took the job if he didn't want to move and they weren't going to permanently reimburse him for commuting. When the army first went to a travel card system, they initially used Amex. The cards had no limit and were activated at all times. One of my soldiers went out and bought a set of rims for his personal vehicle to the tune of $2,500. Now, there are limits and the cards are deactivated until needed. One of my soldiers went out and bought a set of rims for his personal vehicle to the tune of $2,500. Lame guess. He owned a Honda Civic. Lol. He had a Mitsubishi Lancer. Invited their landlord out to a night on the town in lieu of rent payment and told the company it was for a sales lead, so they charged the dinner and drinks to the company card. Basically free rent. Purchased lavish dinners at a local surf and turf, copious amounts of liquor included, for himself and his mistress. They were both married and his wife actually had a chronic illness, and then claimed that the expenses were staff appreciation events. Actually what got him fired. Since when the auditors came they asked employees, what did you do at the staff appreciation event on X date? And we were all like, what staff appreciation event? Honestly, at the time it was hilarious that this was what resulted in his firing, since he was doing so much else that was so much worse. Hired his mistress, slept with her at work and fired everyone who caught them at it. She hired another relative for a basically janitorial role and paid him $30 HR. Going rate for that position. $10 HR. Cut salaries without cause and claimed it was because they'd maxed out. Never attended meetings. Stopped paying company bills. Large corp had us on must prepay cash only, which is unheard of for our industry, etc. But the use of the corporate card was what he got canned on, since it was the easiest for them to prove. During the 2008 recession, the president of the company took a pay cut, so he just started putting everything on his company card. All the gas for his family's cars, dinners for his daughter's volleyball team, TV for his son's apartment, on and on. No real attempt to hide any of it. The accounting department started complaining about it. He told them to just put it in. Finally the head accountant just said no. She couldn't sign her name to this stuff anymore. President of the company fired her on the spot, even calling the police to help escort her out of the building, telling them he suspected her of embezzling but couldn't prove it. But he feared for his safety. A year later the scumbag golden parachuted out of the company. The company barely survived. This pisses me off to no end. Golden parachutes are pretty much the perfect example of the disconnect between upper management and the people who make them their money. Edit. Read the replies to this and place spot the upper level manager. Then take a shot and try not to cry. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.